Welcome everyone to the HP Global Employee Ownership Podcast Series. Today we have with us Tabatha Sedio, VP of Safety and Risk at HB Mechanical Group. Today Tabatha is going to be talking about why she's so passionate about safety, how she got into it, why it's so important, and some different aspects of safety at HB Global. As always, we have with us CEO of HB Global, Bob Whalen, and Senior VP of People and Culture at HB Mechanical Group, Stacy Baum. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We do recognize that this podcast is available to the general public, but we just want to say that the views expressed in it are of Bob Whalen in the context of HB Global and may not apply to broader audiences. With that, Stacy, take it away.
Thanks, Jamie. Tab, thanks for joining Bob and I today on the podcast. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
We're going to talk a little bit about safety today, and I wanted to hear from you what interested you in a career in safety.
So actually, I was in college as a math major, and I was taking, the elective courses, and Intro to Safety came up. And when I went to the class, this was in the late 1990s, and they gave us an introduction about OSHA, which had just started in 1970. I don't think people realize that. And it was a very big up and coming major. Millersville University, where I went, was one of the top accredited ones in the state to do that certification. And it was a very big up and coming for women. Women were not a big part of OSHA at that point. And I just thought it was something interesting. It said it was more career growth and it was just getting bigger. And once I took the intro course, I was hooked and I was happy to get out of Calc 3 and above. And, I didn't know what else I wanted to be with all the math. So I switched over and it was a very nice, there was probably only 25 people in our major, and it was just a really great experience. I think there's very few safety people, especially back then, 25 years ago. So we were offered many different internships and jobs. So it was a very rewarding degree right from the get-go.
Tab, I think one of the best parts of getting to work with you in a safety capacity is the passion you bring for safety. So it definitely is something that you're clearly passionate about and bring some energy to our teams. What drives you to be so passionate for safety?
I really like, of course, the fact that we want everyone to go home the same way they came in, and that is my biggest thing. I really like rolling out a process, teaching people stuff, and seeing it to fruition. Being on the client side as a safety manager, and then, being actually on the broker side, I really lean towards the client side because I now feel like I can embrace, explain, train, and see what I'm doing to fruition. Before on the brokerage side, you can suggest things, but you weren't really living it every day. I enjoy what I do. I'm a very deep professional at heart. It's just my brain activity all the time. I'm just a big thinker, and I need to let it out. People always laugh at me that I always bring safety at home all the time. I can't even go to Home Depot without looking at someone on the scissor lift or the ladder, and they're like, keep it at work. All my friends and my kids laugh at me. I just enjoy what I do. I enjoy the challenge. I feel it is a challenge every day. I feel like it's important, and it's hard. It's something that is hard. It doesn't come easy. It's often, sometimes not as easy to think about and to change our actions and behaviors, but it's kind of like something I strive to do.
And it's really about discipline, being consistent and doing the same things, keeping it top of mind day after day.
Yeah, and I try to make it fun. You have to make it interesting. You have to cater it to your audience. I think that's what's huge. You can't have these, mundane, boring trainings. You have to do, whether it's AI or videos or live speakers. You have to really make it fun. Some people have done the same thing for 20 years, and some people don't even want the phone, or they don't even want a computer to do the training, and you just have to make it interesting. And it's just gotten worse over time because the regulations are now created from injuries. So there's more and more regulations that come up every year and more strict because people have gotten hurt. So we just have to keep it top of mind.
Bob, what's your view on safety, the impact to the organization, and how you think it aligns with our culture?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple view, and Tab already mentioned it, is we want everybody to go home at the end of the day the way they came. And that seems like a simple thing, but in our business, it's really not. There's all kinds of things going on a job site or in a service situation. That we really got to, first of all, we got to be educated and on how is the best way to work. But then we have to actually do it. We have to be disciplined. And I go back to I took a job site tour, not of one of our jobs, right around 2010 when I was just getting in the industry. And I was going to the nuclear power plant that they were building in Augusta, Georgia. And I was on this tour, and the person that was giving the tour yelled at us about not having our hand on the railing for walking down the steps. And at the time, I thought to myself, my gosh, I've been walking down steps my whole life. Why would I need? But it goes to show, and now over the more than 15 years that I've been in the industry, you see how many simple slip and falls happen, that are, end up with somebody having to have surgery or something. And just as simply as holding on to the railing as you're walking down the steps may prevent that. And so that I think that that's an important part, of doing and being disciplined about doing the right things all the time, and that we are so much more likely, not to have an issue if we do that.
That's a great example. Tab, what's something that has had impact on you in your safety career? An experience or something that you've seen work or
Yeah, so I've been, like I said, I've been in this business for about 25 years now. I've unfortunately seen some incidents, whether it's amputations, loss of legs, loss of hands. Um, you think just normal, food production, and there's hazards behind it. I've seen, and that has really focused on really looking at corrective actions, the root cause, and unfortunately, sometimes that stuff has to happen to really kickstart the culture of safety, which it has changed after those. Positively, we've had a speaker who was actually burned a long time ago, and he has been a speaker. I've seen him 3 times now in person, and he is just a motivational speaker. That not only the repercussions of his injury to himself, but what it's done to his family, what it's done to his life, the pain it was in, and pretty much it was due to a shortcut for not wanting to wear the proper PPE and not taking the time to lock stuff out. So that 5 minutes has shown to be a lifelong effect. And I think some of those things, unfortunately, have just shown that, there's no plumbing attachment. There's no, walking on a job site, without the right shoes or without PPE that is worth it to not go home. Your family deserves it. And it's all these little shortcuts that we take for granted that we don't realize. You're talking about the handrail. It's more of, something falls on the floor, you're walking over a puddle somewhere. That person behind you might not see it. You have. So you might want to put a warning sign or stuff like that. If there's something falls, take it out. I remember when I walk at like stores, like the runners, when you walk in the stores, if they're folded, I always unfold it because, some people just walk over it. Well, then someone behind me might be on their phone or something and not see it. So all those little things. Now, again, my mind is trained like that, and it's everywhere, at home as well. But it is those little things that just make such a difference. And dealing with a lot of different industries, unions, non-unions, different management styles. I'll tell you, that's probably been one of my biggest, because you have to really cater to getting supervisors and managers, and from being, whether it's they're very into safety or you really have to convince them, you really have to, as a leader, understand how to do that and not just, dictate safety and just be forceful. Sometimes you have to be, but you really have to share the message and make it easy. And that's one of the big things that I like to do. I'm very thorough with presenting training, presenting SOPs, explaining the why. we need to do it. It's not just I'm at home thinking of how I can, add some time to someone's day. People are like, where'd you come up with that? I'm like, I didn't just come up with it for myself. I came up with it because maybe we had 5 incidents of a laceration, or we've seen that in the industry that's coming. It's more of a cause and effect, not just I'm just creating it from scratch, which I think is huge.
Stacy, I think one of the things that I used to talk to my kids about when they were at home, and one of the lines I would use with them is you don't want to get a disproportionate penalty, for something you do. You want the penalty to be in line, with the infraction. And the problem with safety, and like a lot of other things, with kids growing up, is, sometimes the penalty is disproportionate, to the crime. If you just take your glasses off, for, a minute because they were fogging up because it was hot or whatever, and you lose your eyesight because you didn't have your glasses on. I mean, that's a disproportionate penalty,
Absolutely.
for the crime or the infraction, and I think we just want to be thoughtful about that, because it's just so important, in our business. If you're daydreaming out on the site, and somebody's swinging a bucket and you're not paying attention, it could be a problem. So there's just so many things that can happen. We really need to be disciplined and focused, relative to the importance of safety all around.
Very good comments. So, Tab, can you tell us what's the industry seeing right now as far as top injury types or incidents?
So, unfortunately, with construction, it's a lot different than the general industry, the manufacturing, because it changes every day. Whereas you might have a concrete surface one day, you might have, pavers the next, you might have, the finished flooring. So, all the terrain changes, the job site changes. Subcontractors the day before could have done stuff. Then now that you got back, it's completed. So, you really have different risks every day. The top 3 things construction is seeing right now: fall from heights, whether it's ladder, scaffolding, roof, people not being tied off properly, or having fall protection but not using it properly. You don't want to have people wearing the harnesses and then not wearing it, or not attaching it to people, or device. Struck by incidents, whether it's stuff falling off a roof if they're not looking, falling off of storage, falling from heights, whether it's materials, um, from a forklift not being stabilized. And then the third one is caught in between. So if we're using a machine, if we're using a tool, attaching things, fastening stuff, unfortunately, sometimes forklifts, equipment, people, all those things we're seeing is actually the top 3 in the construction, with the fourth being electrocution. And I will tell you, the top 3, we've actually seen one, if not multiple, of each of those incidents. And we've seen them, and they've turned out to be lost time. They've reduced to be, some people may never be the way they were before. They may have permanent injuries. And again, it was shortcuts. It was, let me just do this real quick, even though I didn't have the right material. I didn't want to secure that because it was only going to take 5 minutes, and I only had to move it a couple feet. So it's more of, we really just need to. So it's interesting because what is the industry standard is what we seem to be following, and it just so happens to be something that we really need to focus on. And I think we do a good job when stuff does happen, and what we're really trying to do is just trying to be more proactive, on saying, let's not wait till this stuff happens. Let's really try. Let's send that as a more of a culture to say, we want to make sure if we take the extra 10 minutes to set something up properly, or if you don't have the right PPE, time out, let's go get it. There's no one in all of HB since I've been here that is going to say, no, you don't need to get the right PPE. I think it's more of the employees are scared to ask. But I want them to know that they can stop and they can ask. And if for some reason they say no, call us. Everyone calls, and they're not shy to call me, so I will always back you up on that. But that is a big thing I want to make sure that people know, because we have seen the incidents happen.
And Stacy, I think Tabatha makes a really important point, and I think about the importance of leadership as it relates to creating this culture. And when I talk about leadership, I'm talking,
At all
down to the
levels.
very lowest supervisor. If you're sending a message, that it's all about efficiency and not about safety, that will have consequences, for our company and for our people. And I think it's really important to understand, that you need to consistently, in a disciplined way, always being reinforcing a culture where safety is the most important thing. Frankly, it's the only thing, that matters. And so it's just like anything else. You can do the right thing most of the time, but if you just do the wrong thing, once or twice, it's going to bite you. And that goes for the leadership that we have in the company. If we have, 500 leaders in the company, if we have one or two out there that are not doing the right thing, it's really going to hurt, our culture, because our employee base is going to see, an inconsistency. And then everybody's a leader when it comes to safety, because you're responsible for your own actions. You're the leader of you, and so everybody in their own way is a leader and is responsible for our safety culture and making sure that our behaviors are in line with that, and everybody's watching.
Along with that, Bob, it's interesting when I talk to some supervisors and foremen, and they sit there, we explain to them doing JSAs and toolbox talks and training, and they're like, do we have time for that? Is that factored into the job? Is that something that, how do I fit that in? Well, when incidents happen, we don't really plan time for that. And what they don't realize is the incident itself, a 10-minute toolbox talk or a 15-minute JSA, your incident is not only direct. The employee goes to the doctor. You have to do the investigation. You're meeting, you might have to clean up the job site. You might have to retrain everyone, have a stand down. And then what happens is the indirect. People don't think of that. You might have someone who can't come back to work. You might have to get a temp. You might have to get other labor. Now your job is really delayed because you maybe have one person out. The time it takes for paperwork, the time it takes, God forbid, you have to go to a court hearing or something like that. They have to do physical therapy 3 times a week.
Or you have an OSHA inspection.
Or OSHA, yeah, you have to call OSHA. So that 10-minute OSHA talk or JSA at the beginning of the shift or the week, we really can't compare apples to that time. And I think there is a mindset of that. Like, how do I find the time to do that? You also don't have the time built in for an accident. And I think people automatically look at the cost right away and say, oh, how much is that going to cost me? No, and it could be the cost of medical and time away, but what about the job? The job one, and the responsibility, and the respect. What happens? It's just like when we have plumbing. If we have leaks all the time, a GC might not call you all the time because you have leaks. So if you have incidents all the time, they might double think, and that's why we have all the rates and stuff. So we really just need to promote that it's not just about, the cost, or we're just trying to get the job done, because it really does affect the time.
Yeah, I think of this, in the context that a lot is short-term thinking versus long-term, thinking. Are we really thinking, about the long-term and the long-term effects? And, to make Tabatha's point, using that short-term time is going to pay dividends in the long run. But the reality is we only get one go at this. And if we permanently disable ourselves or are killed on a job, none of this was worth it. And that's something that I think we just got to keep in mind as we go through this. And hopefully it carries over not just to what you do, when you're on the job here, but we're going to be, it's going to be just as sad as if you're at home cleaning out your gutter on a ladder and you get up on the top step and fall and disable yourself, or, worse yet, one of the biggest safety hazards at home are ladders.
Right.
And so I think it's just really important this needs to be the priority 100% of the time, not 99.9, 100% of the time. And I think it's a long-term choice that we make that we know will pay off unless, accidents.
And we've talked before about leading from all levels in the organization, and I know you mentioned it earlier. It's everyone's responsibility for safety. So no matter what your role is, I think it's just about being a good teammate. So whether some of our leaders on site are busy or preoccupied with something else. If you see something, say something.
Well, the reality is one of our biggest problems with safety is our newer employees that are on the site. And that's everybody's responsibility.
Right.
When we have that, first year apprentice that's out there, take the responsibility as a mentor to make sure that when you see them doing something, that's not in line with what we should be doing, take the time, to explain it. And this is really not time, for hazing them over what they're doing. It's really a time to show concern and just like, hey, no kidding around. You do this stuff enough, it will bite you. And so really important for our company, but most importantly for that individual.
I think another big takeaway too is it's not just the safety manager's responsibility. And that's something that we've really promoted over the past year or two. We've had supervisory safety training to kind of say, yes, you are, managing the project, but you don't just take a blind eye to safety. You can't just say, oh, the safety guys come and put your glasses on. This is something that you have to do. Well, our safety people can't be at every job site every day. So you have to be an extension of our safety and risk department as a job, as a supervisor. You have to actually manage the claims. You have to manage the new hires. Some of our divisions do have the hard hat program for our new hires. They have a different hard hat for the first 6 months, different color, which so when the supervisor or foreman's walking around, they might take a little longer look when they see, the gray versus the blue hard hat, just to see what's going on or attach a mentor to them. But that is, I think, key. And doing the supervisor training, they're like, I'm supposed to do the investigation and then this and then that. I said, yeah, like we don't have, 200 safety people. It's, there's a supervisor foreman at each job, superintendent, and they have to embrace that as well. And it can't just be, we don't want to be the safety police. And every time we're there, just finding stuff. This has to be every day. Everyone can trip on that hazard. You don't want to wait till the safety person comes. And I think that's important, especially geographically where we are. We have so many different job sites. Manufacturing, there's one site, one safety manager can be there. We have so many different sites, even for each division. There's no way a safety person can be there.
Bob, from a leadership level, how do you stay informed of how we're doing? How do we measure safety across the board?
Well, I think one way to just emphasize, the importance of safety is, where you put it in the order of things that you do. And so with each one of our divisions, we have what we call an operational review each month. And the very first topic, on that agenda is safety. It's what's going on with safety. So every single one of our safety incidents I know about. So we go through it in that meeting, and then the first one is, did we have any safety incidences? And then we're going through the investigation that was done post, what needs to change, what happened, why, what's going on, how do we prevent this, in the future. It's just such an important part of it, and I think, and it's not just, on the construction site or on the service site. We're also looking vehicle safety too. One of the biggest things for us is vehicle safety, and we put in the driver scorecard, recently. And, I even know how that's affected me. I drive a personal car, so my car isn't, rigged up with, measuring, my scorecard. But I will say this, I find myself thinking about when I'm too close to the car in front of me, that why am I, right up on the backside of that car? Where do I think I'm going? Because that's just, one of the ways you're going to end up being in an accident is not have time to react to something that happens in front of you. So this plays out, in our life, in general. And I think it's really important, for us to, recognize the importance of this stuff, and for us to symbolize the importance of safety. We make it the very first thing, that we do before we even talk about employee turnover and, that aspect. And then finally, at the end, we get into, what's going on financially. How are we doing financially in the business? Those things are all important. We can't. We got to do all of them
All of
well
them
for
well.
us to be success. But very specifically, safety's on the front end to just show this is the most important thing.
Can't do the operation out stuff without all of our assets, which
Right.
is, our key assets are employees. And I really just don't like to see people get hurt for silly reasons. And I think that's another form of my passion. Like, I'll give you whatever special glasses or hat or, let's just gloves. It's just silly. I've seen bad injuries, and I think, I get a little bit shaken up with that. I think there was one or two here incidents that we had that it really hit me. And I know it's a part of the job, but there's definitely things over the years that I felt, you just feel it. And I'm devastated to see it. And, look, I've already had to be at two people's houses in my career to tell them or tell them their spouse lost a leg, lost fingers. And I don't want to do that again. And, I don't want to be morbid or disgusting, but it's a horrible thing to do. And, then it's not only just that one time, it's helping him get, her get fixed and get medically taken care of. But then it leads into a whole OSHA.
Yes.
So it's a whole year you're talking about it. So it doesn't go away. So it's something that I just think it's important. I'm a huge component of, at home work and play, be safe. If you're injured on your lawnmower and you can't come to work the next day, it not only affects your home, but now your work and now your finances at home. We might have disability insurance, but it still affects you. You might not be able to hold your kid like you used to. You might not be able to go to the ball game and play catch. Those are the things that I think it's important too. Like Bob said, to preach it both and to practice it both.
So, Tab, June is National Safety Month. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening in June.
Yeah, so nationwide, June is National Safety Month for a variety of reasons. A lot of companies embrace whether it's just additional awareness of topics. Of course, we all talk about different topics, but it's just to bring a little bit more emphasis to the workforce, to your teammates, just to emphasize, more. We want people to double check the equipment, double check your ladders before you do it. Make sure they're attached to the vehicle properly. Do a quick vehicle check. Just kind of promote awareness to your everyday stuff. Again, it's stuff that you do every day. It's like a habit. The habits are just like they say, unsafe behaviors are the biggest cause of accidents. It's the habit that you're doing. I always laugh, when you lose electric at your house and you go to the room, your lights are out, that.
Right.
But by habit, you go to the next room and you hit the light switch. The lights are out, it's dark,
Right.
and the electric went out. But you get into such a habit that to break that habit or to change the unsafe behavior is very difficult. So, we just ask that June, since, we're still during that month, is just emphasize, your teammate next to you, you saw take his glasses off because it was foggy or he was sweating. Give a minute, put your glasses on before we start welding again or
Right.
or cutting that pipe again. It's those little things that I would want someone to tell me that, because they might have forgot. They might have just said they were hot or they're in the moment, or someone said, grab that real quick. Give me a minute. Let me just do that. It's not bad to let someone know, maybe, oh, do you realize that your hat fell off? Do you realize, your glove was ripped? Stuff like that. It's just little things like that. So really, it's just a month to just bring more awareness. Construction has its own safety week in May, which I know a lot of the divisions are talking about. A lot of the general contractors hold some additional training sessions and some motivational lunches. But it's just really more of, and again, at home. Another big thing that we're going to bring up this month is heat stress. That's a big thing to start the summer, and that's something that I think people take a lot for granted. Even home, you even hear it in sporting events. People don't take care of themselves, for personal sporting events of hydration, and it's important to know those effects. So we're going to be covering off on some of that this month. So we really just want to put another emphasis on the safety awareness. So you can never have too much.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Tab, I know you and the safety leaders in the organization have been working on a project or are going to continue working on a project throughout the rest of this year for Know Your Why.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, so just like we, Bob and I both mentioned, we want everyone to leave work the same way they came in and go home. Your family deserves it. You deserve it. So what we were trying to, really motivate and spread the word of is, what's your why? So if you're coming to work and we see bulletin boards and we're trying to do some sort of posters, bulletin boards, um, some sort of just the visuals when you come to work, whether it's your dog or your spouse or your kid or, your mom or your car, or you're a car buff. What's your why that you want to go home? What's your why that you're going to make good choices to come to work today? And I think it breaks the ice of, if sometimes a supervisor and employee, or even an employee to employee, they might see that dog and be like, oh, I have that dog too. Oh, that's great. You know what? I would want to go home to that too. Um, it's little things like that I think it brings it more personally. And I think that's what we have to do. I think a lot of people are like, oh, work, work, work. But it is personal to us. We do want you to go home. And we don't need all your personal life, but I think it is a key core, because you don't want to just come to work and that's your life. You go home to enjoy your family, your kids, your dog. So we're really trying to promote that. Hopefully, in the next 6 months, we really want to push that out to the divisions and say, look, guys, what maybe when you go to the job trailer every morning, you see a picture, you know, of your dog or your spouse. You know what? I do want to go home. I do have a vacation next week with that. I do want to go enjoy that with them. And it just really promotes why you want to do it. Don't take that shortcut. Don't forget your glass. Oh, you know what? My glasses are in my car. Let me go get them real quick. These little things, I know it sounds silly, but again, if you grow that habit of thinking about it every day, it will become nature. So I'm excited about that. I like crafty things too. So I like doing the crafts. I do like talking about it. I am definitely over passionate about it, but I think it's important. And um, you know me, I get a little excessive about stuff, but I think that's where I like to see things to fruition. I like to see things work out, and I think a win-win for everyone is for people to remain healthy.
It's a great note, I think, for us to end on. Thank you, Tab, for your time and
Absolutely.
all of the good stories. Thank you, Bob, for your input and stories that you shared today. I think safety is so important to our business and our people.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. If you have questions for Bob, we'd love to hear them and answer them in future podcasts. Feel free to submit them to eopodcast@hb-global.com, and we'll see you next time.